Here's why I think single tenant net lease buildings are not a great investment, at least for myself. Hey guys, this is Matthew from Commercial Deal Junkie. I'm a commercial broker and investor based out of Southern California, buying commercial property all around the country. So one of the most popular types of commercial real estate investment is the single tenant net lease. That is a typically a single tenant freestanding building that trades by itself, has a really low cap rate because they tend to be national credit tenants. You got the Wendy's, you got the Habits, you got the Chipotle's, the McDonald's, the KFC's. Now, these tend to be very stable investments. They'll have long leases, 10, 15, 20-year leases with lots of options to renew. You have a national tenant that's paying you rent every month like clockwork. And sometimes they're in good locations, sometimes they're in bad locations. But maybe asking, hey, Matt, why do you think something like this is a poor investment? I'll tell you why right now. So let's go over them, and I'm going to show you some that are trading right now and my opinions on them. But let's go over. This is just cut nationwide single tenant net lease investments. So let's just dive into one of these. Like this is a Wendy's here in Cushing, Oklahoma. We have this Wendy's here. I'm not very familiar with where Cushing is. Yeah, so small town in Oklahoma. Yeah, we got a Wendy's drive through. Looks like a newer build. Yep, they just finished building this thing. So here's one of the issues. Number one, the returns are low. You're getting a 5.5 cap. Yeah, you'll have some rent increases, but the NOI in this is 142,500. Okay. So you're consistently going to be getting, after you pay your mortgage, depending on how much you put down. The returns on these, especially with interest rates being high, the returns on these are pretty much nothing. If you use the little Crexy calculator here, you got to put like how much down? Let's see how much down before you're actually cash flowing positive. So assume you're going to be at a 6.5% interest rate on a 25-year term, which is pretty standard for retail. This is a $2.59 million property. And you got to put at 25% down, your negative cash flow, 30% down, still negative cash flow. Yeah. So you got to hit 35, 33. So you're going to have to put, about $1 million down just to start making money from this thing. Why? Because it's trading at a 5.5 cap, but interest rates are at 6.5, 7. So you're negatively levered. But here is the big thing here. You are massively overpaying for retail in Cushing, Oklahoma. I guarantee you nothing else in Cushing, Oklahoma is trading at this price per square foot. So in single tenant net lease retail, you are overpaying for the real estate because it's backed by a good lease. Okay. So this thing is, what was the purchase price? 259,909. Sure, let's say 250 divided by, I'm trying to figure out what's the price per square foot for this. You're paying over $1,000 a square foot for retail in Oklahoma. That's not even Southern California prices. So because the lease is on there, you're essentially buying a bond backed by real estate. This is what people are focused on when they buy single tenant net lease. What is going to be my return? How much am I putting in? And what's my return? But there's a massive issue with this. People might think, oh, if I'm just looking for something safe, something steady, why don't I go out and buy a single tenant net lease and let the credit tenant, let the Wendy's, let the Starbucks, let whatever it is keep sending me money every month. I pay off my mortgage, and it all is good. Now here's the problem. Here's the real problem. If that tenant leaves, you are absolutely screwed. You might be thinking, oh, well, Wendy's, they're not going to leave. Starbucks isn't going to leave. Walgreens is going to leave. They might not, but they also might. I'm going to go over some examples here of properties I pulled up that are for sale, where they had credit tenants that left, and now the landlords are selling it for way less than what they bought it. Because now they actually have to sell it on the value of the real estate and not the value of the lease and the credit tenant that was in there. Okay. So here's one that's in Baker, California. It used to be a Harvey's, or for those on the east or those on the West Coast, Carl's Jr. So whoever this person is, I'm sorry, but you bought this for 2.5 million in July 2022. $729 a square foot at a 5.3 cap. Okay. Now this tenant left. They're trying to rent the space for a similar price to what the Carl's Jr. was paying. But if they can't rent it out at $38.52 a square foot, so they're going to need another credit tenant to come in there and pay that rent. They're going to have to sell the building at 1.7 million, which is an $800,000 loss on this deal. And a lot of people think, oh, Carl's Jr. isn't going anywhere. If they don't like the location, that location isn't doing good business, they'll leave. Another thing is a lot of these are owned by franchisees, not necessarily by corporate Carl's Jr. So if that franchisee is operating poorly, isn't doing a good job, gets over leveraged on some other deals, they could lose their location or they'll be forced to stop operating at that location. And then as a landlord, you are absolutely screwed. This is an $800,000 loss over, it hasn't even been 3 years, over 2.5 years, $600,000 loss, all because the Carl's Jr. decided to leave. Here's another example. And Advanced Auto Parts. Now, Advanced Auto Parts is in the news. This is big. They decided they're closing hundreds of stores on the West Coast. So all these landlords now are scrambling that they have these properties that they bought for on a cap rate, on 5 caps and 6 caps. And now they have the tenant that's leaving and it has to sell at the actual value of the building. You can no longer skyrocket the value because there's a credit tenant in there. It stops selling on a cap rate and starts selling on a price per square foot, which is why you should evaluate property. One of your considerations when purchasing should be the price per square foot. If you only look at the cap rate, it can cause you to overpay for real estate. So this is over a $1.2 million loss on this Advanced Auto in Albuquerque, New Mexico. 8-year hold. They bought it at a 5.4 cap, thinking it's a very, very strong tenant. They had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of locations. So you're thinking they're not going anywhere. But they had some financial difficulties in the past. They vacated the unit. And now you have this property here, which is in a good location on a good piece of land. But it's not worth this. Without a lease on it, it's just not worth the 2.6 million. So this is going on a lot. This is going on with CVS's. This is going on with Walgreens. This is going on with Advanced Autos, and even the ones that you think are not leaving, like the Starbucks and the Carl's Juniors and all these other credit tenants that you think aren't going anywhere. Number one, they're run by operators that could be crappy operators, and then either the location fails or they decide not to do it, or sometimes they'll even go dark on you. So the location they'll still have the sign up, they'll still be paying every month, but they're no longer operating there. And you actually you can't sell that at the same cap rate you bought it at because a dark tenant, as known as, most likely doesn't renew. So single tenant net leases, they're not as safe as people make them out to be. I think they're actually riskier than other types of retail, like multi-tenant strip or grocery anchored strip, although that has a risk all to itself. So before you buy a single tenant net lease deal, ask yourself, am I overpaying for the real estate? How easy will this be to re-tenant to another national tenant? Like there are some landlords that go out there and buy single tenant net lease deals, but they make sure it has a drive-through. It's in a very good location. They're not overpaying on a cap rate and a price per square foot. And if the tenant leaves, they know it may take, a couple months, maybe a year to wait for another credit tenant that's going to pay similar rents or will trade at a similar cap rate. So the building value didn't tank. Like, let's look at this one, Route 66. I don't know how good of a road that is. I know it's on a big lot. So they might be able to re-tenant this, and they're trying at $20 a square foot. But let's see what that values the building at. 20 bucks a square foot times 7, 1, 2, 3. And then let's say they're gonna get they get a decent credit tenant, trades at a 6 cap. So yeah, if they find another credit tenant in there that's gonna pay similar prices to what Advanced Auto was paying, it'll be worth 2.3 again, which is still less than what they bought. Advanced Auto traded at a really low cap rate. But the point is, you got to deep dive it. You got to make sure you're not overpaying for the real estate. You got to make sure that the tenant is staying. Personally, I recommend shying away from single tenant net lease. People that buy these are typically very deep into their career, into the real estate investing career, have a lot of money, and either don't have the energy, don't have the time, don't have the health to manage the real estate or look after it, and they're just looking to place a few $1 million and just receive a check every month, pay off their mortgage. They don't want any calls from the tenants. But even when you're in that situation, I think you're taking on more risk than you think with the single tenant net lease deals. I hope you guys enjoyed. I wanted to spend some time talking about the darker side to single tenant net lease deals because it's so promoted in today's commercial investing world. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next one.